Andrew, I want to begin with you at the UN yesterday. Pretty extraordinary scene there as Sergei Lavrov breezed in 90 minutes late to his speech and quickly left, clearly not wanting to hear or to be confronted by the speeches from all those other member nations about Russia's war in Ukraine.
And it was remarkable. Willie and Admiral Stavridis, good morning to you. Remarkable because, you know, Russia, of course, as one of the 5 permanent members of the United Nations, has a veto, has been a strikingly forceful presence there in stopping the UN from taking, you know, any really strong action against Russia because of Ukraine. They have an ally in China. But in this case, certainly, President Xi signaled to Vladimir Putin just last week that China does not stand with him, you know, completely endorsing this Ukraine invasion. And that was sort of the mixed message, certainly a mixed message from China, but almost every other member of the Security Council, members of the UN, just critical of Russia, and Lavrov didn't want to hear it. So Lavrov comes in after Blinken had spoken and leaves a minute or two afterwards, did not hear any of the criticism, but it was just completely disparaging. Senior officials telling us afterwards that both on camera and off, there was nothing but really strong criticism against Russia for the war crimes, Russia for trying to annex the territory, and now Vladimir Putin clearly on his back foot. Now, this is not to say that Russia doesn't have weapons of mass destruction. The nuclear threat, which is, Blinken said, was just outrageous, and, you know, all of the other chemical weapons that could be used. If he's cornered, no one knows what he's going to do, and that is a serious concern to the U.S. But at least now, the fact that he's calling up 300,000 troops, that there are protests in Russia, which is extraordinary in itself, 1,300 at least people arrested, people who arrested, we're told, were getting draft notices once they were in custody. This is coming home. He cannot completely hide it anymore from the Russian people with the disinformation and misinformation. And as Blinken warned yesterday, there is going to be, you know, there are going to be prosecutions, and they're trying their best to preserve the evidence. There is a massive European Union and U.S. and International Criminal Court operation underway to try to do what they can to hold them accountable at some point for the horrors of what's happening in Ukraine. Willie?
Admiral Sergei Lavrov yesterday in that speech just described a completely alternate reality, divorced from what's actually happening in this war. He accused, as I said, Ukraine of war crimes. He called Vladimir Zelensky a bastard who's, you know, prosecuting an unjust war. It was almost a complete mirror image of what's happening here. And those images, my gosh, of people trying to flee through airports, through roads, on trains, as 300,000 citizens are now being asked to step into this war, many of them just saying out loud, what am I going to fight and die for?
Yeah, I think Andrea and I are old enough, or shall I say senior enough, to look at this and think, has Putin met his Vietnam? This is really starting to rattle the echoes of that war. It is most directly in the home front aspect of it, the protests, the people running away from this, really quite remarkable. You know, our Secretary of State, who is handling this beautifully, yesterday at the United Nations said Putin has really doubled down. I'm going to add on, I think he's tripled down in that he is rattling the nuclear saber. He is talking about this faux set of referendums in eastern Ukraine, effectively annexing these conquered territories, and he's calling up 300,000 reservists. That's a triple. It may be he's all in. So this is, in fact, a dangerous moment. Let me put those 3 things in perspective very quickly. The nuclear one, I don't lose a lot of sleep over. I don't see Putin deciding to use a nuclear weapon. It would create a huge movement away from him dramatically in world opinion. Maybe he doesn't care about it, but he cares about what India, Brazil, Nigeria, South Africa, what that kind of swing vote cares about. So I don't see him using a nuclear weapon. He can achieve those effects with other aspects of his military. The faux referendum, no one's going to believe it. It's total nonsense. I am focused on this 300,000 troops coming up. And there I am skeptical that Putin will be able to get them into fighting shape, if you will, and into Ukraine in anything less than months and months and months, particularly given the pushback he's receiving at home. So bottom line, Putin is upping the ante, to stay with a poker analogy, maybe going all in. But I think the storm clouds are rising for Vladimir Putin.